We're in the middle of Torah Yud Zayin and Likutey Moharan called VaYehi hem Merikim sakehem. And so Rabbi Nachman is teaching us in this Torah how to receive the light of the tzaddik. And what is it? The light. What is the light? What's the function of the light of the tzaddik? What is the function of being connected to the tzaddik and receiving the light from the tzaddik? What's the light of the tzaddik mean? Rabbi Nachman explains to us that the tzaddik brings to us a certain state of awareness, a certain cognition, a certain consciousness that will cause us to experience more fear and more love of Hashem, more awe of the Ribono Shel Olam, and more love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that is really, we explained, is the basis, the foundation of our relationship with Hashem. And so how does the tzaddik do this? Rabbi Nachman explained what tzaddik brings to our awareness the purpose and the intention that Hashem has in creating the world in general, and specifically every part of the world, every part of the universe. And what is that purpose? What is that intention? That's the pride that Hashem prides himself with the Jewish people in general, and with each individual in the Jewish people specifically, and with each part of each individual even more specifically. And when the tzaddik brings us to our awareness, so now it's as if the king is celebrated, his kingship is celebrated, and the king is showing himself. He's being celebrated in the coronation of the king, the kingship of the king, and the king is being seen by his subjects wearing his royal clothing, wearing the clothing of splendor. And so that's kind of like the pride that Hashem is priding himself with the Jewish people. It's the royal clothing, the clothing of splendor. Bigdei tif'arto, the clothing of his splendor, okay, the royal clothing of the king. And that's the Tiferet Yisrael, the pride of Israel. The pride of Hashem is Israel, is the Jewish people, and the pride of the Jewish people is Hashem. And so when the tzaddik brings us to our awareness, this pride that Hashem prides himself with the Jewish people, so we feel tremendous awe, just like the awe, comparable to the awe that the subjects feel when the king, all of a sudden, they see the king wearing surrounded by all of his glory, wearing the royal clothing and surrounded by the tremendous glory and the entourage and the guards and all that. And everyone feels tremendous awe. And in that time, the king, so to speak, Hashem, so to speak, experiences tremendous fulfillment, a tremendous accomplishment, a fulfillment of his intention, a fulfillment of his goal, of his wish, what he had in mind when he created the world. That's now fulfilled. That's now accomplished. And when the king feels this fulfillment, it's tremendous joy. It's called ratzon, tremendous joy and ratzon. The king wants to share that joy, that happiness, that fulfillment, that accomplishment. And he tells his subjects, whatever you wish, whatever you need, come, let me know, and I will give you all your heart's desires. And so that's the king. Now we are experiencing tremendous love from the king, tremendous love from Hashem. And so this is also what comes about through that awareness that the tzaddik brings, the awareness of the glory of the king, the pride of the king in his kingdom. Okay? And when that is brought to our awareness, when that's brought to our consciousness through the tzaddik, we experience awe of the king, and at the same time we feel tremendous love from the king. We're experiencing the king showing us tremendous love, tremendous ratzon. And so now that we have understood that that's the foundation of experiencing love and fear of Hashem, awe, yirah ve'ahava, then we must understand what is it that usually blocks a person from experiencing this. So Rabbi Nachman says a person can be sitting right next to the tzaddik, cannot experience any of this light. He's completely blocked off to that state of consciousness and awareness that the tzaddik is drawing to us. And why is that? Rabbi Nachman explains, because it's because the actions of the person are shameful, they're inappropriate, they're wrong, they're disconnected from his ideals, from what he recognizes as the right way, the true way, the higher self. He's disconnected from his actions, are disconnected from his higher self, and that causes that the higher self goes into a state of absence, concealment, And therefore now his consciousness is filled with ksilut, which literally means foolishness. Okay, instead of being wise with divine intelligence, with wisdom, with da'at, expanded consciousness, now he is a fool. Okay, he is experiencing ksilut ha-sechel. And so how can we remove this block? And Rabbi Nachman says that this block comes about, the reason why a person can fall into this obscurity of the consciousness, to this disconnection from the higher self, is because the powers of obscurity have overpowered, so to speak, the Malchut of Hashem, the Mizbeach, the Malchut of Hashem, the kingdom, the kingship of Hashem in this world. In this world is represented by the Malchut, represented by the Mizbeach, the altar, where all of the korbanot, all the sacrifices are brought, which is basically the idea of connecting and elevating and lifting up all of the physicality of this world to Hashem, proclaiming and expressing that it is all from Hashem and it's all for Hashem, and returning everything to a state of perfection. That's what the Mizbeach does. It returns everything in the physical world to a state of perfection. What's the ultimate state of perfection? Is when everything is included in the ultimate perfection. When everything is integrated and included within the Or Ein Sof, within the light of Hashem, one with the oneness of the universe, then everything is returned to a state of perfection. Anything that is imperfect is only because it has fallen to a state of separateness. It's been disconnected from that oneness, from that Hashem Echad. And the Mizbeach accomplishes this. The function of the Mizbeach is to connect, lift up, and include everything back in that oneness, into Hashem Echad. And when the forces of obscurity, which are the forces, the energies of separateness, the energies of argument, the energies of anger and frustration, the energies of hatred, when they overpower the Mizbeach, when they overcome the Mizbeach, then a person can fall into that state of foolishness, where he loses that connection with a higher self. He has been disconnected, just like the Mizbeach's function is to connect everything and include everything into the highest state of perfection, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So on a personal level, if a person has caused or has experienced that the forces of obscurity, what's called the klipot, the forces of idol worship, of the 70 nations that are surrounding Yerushalayim, surrounding the Mizbeach, when they overpower the light of the Mizbeach, so a person can feel on a personal level, a person will experience on a personal level that foolishness and that disconnect from the higher self. And so Rabbi Nachman explains to us how we can go about fixing this. He says that these forces of evil, these forces of obscurity, the forces of concealment, the klipot, that are surrounding the Mizbeach, they're surrounding Yerushalayim, they're surrounding the Malchut of Hashem, they don't have an energy from themselves, they don't have a life force on their own, they don't have an independent life force, they don't have an independent place in existence. Anything that they have is only what they managed to steal from the Malchut. It's only what they managed to steal, scraps away from the Mizbeach. And so our purpose is to return those sparks of holiness that they have swollen up, that they have swallowed up, to return them back to the Mizbeach, return them back to the Malchut. That will bring the Malchut to a state of perfection, of wholeness, and that will cause them, those forces of evil, those forces of obscurity, to be subdued and eliminated. And then on a personal level, a person will experience that connection and that integration and that inclusion in their higher self. And that is really what it means that a person is experiencing this expanded consciousness, what Rabbi Nachman calls hitromemut sechel, elated consciousness, elated and enlightened consciousness. Hitromemut sechel. And when a person has that hitromemut sechel, that expanded, elated, enlightenment, elation and enlightenment, he can experience the light of the tzaddik, the consciousness that the tzaddik is drawing to him, is bringing to him, and that will cause him to feel love and the fear of Hashem, the awe and the fear of Hashem. And so Rabbi Nachman explains to us that we can complete the Mizbeach, we can fix the Mizbeach by eating our meals at our table with a certain awareness. When we sit at our table and we recognize, like the pasuk says, this is the table set in front of Hashem, that I'm sitting here eating from the food that Hashem provided for me, from the sustenance that Hashem has given me. Okay, in order to energize and empower my higher self, so that the sparks of holiness in this food that I'm eating right now will give me energy to serve Hashem in a greater way, and not in order to fulfill my animal desire. My animal wants to just stuff its face with food and drink, and you know, like the Ben Soyer Omar, right? Just to fill up its face, stuff its face with food, with the desires, the pleasures of good food and good wine. That's not the reason why I'm eating. I'm eating here from the food that Hashem provided for me in order to energize, to re-energize, and to empower my higher self, so that I can use this energy to serve Hashem in a greater, better way, and so that my body is strong and healthy and is full with vitality, with perfect, vibrant health, and I can use that and channel that in learning Torah in greater, better ways, and davening to Hashem, and using all of this energy to serve Hashem in a greater way, to glorify Hashem's name. And so when you eat with this intention, and it only takes a few moments to really connect to this intention, then that already changes where the food is going to. And so now the energy of the food is empowering your higher self instead of empowering the animal self. And now all of those forces of evil, of obscurity, those energies surrounding the Mizbeach that are trying to steal away sparks of holiness, are left without any sparks. They only receive whatever they need in order to survive, because we're still in this state of the world where Hashem wants them to survive, but they don't have any power to be able to overcome the Malchut. And so they're subdued and eliminated, and now my awareness, my consciousness is able to expand to that state of enlightenment, that state of elevated and higher consciousness, that we spoke about. And then Rabbi Nachman now is offering us another way, another option, another explanation, and another layer, another dimension to understand how we can complete the Mizbeach. And if we complete the Mizbeach, as we said, so then the idol worshippers surrounding the Mizbeach are subdued and eliminated, and they can no longer overtake our higher consciousness. They can no longer overtake the light of our consciousness, and they can no longer disconnect us from that light. And so Rabbi Nachman explains to us that by bringing the souls, the holy souls, the Jewish souls that were lost among the 70 nations, bringing them back to Judaism, bringing them back to Hashem, those are the sparks of holiness that were swallowed by the idol worshippers. They were swallowed by the 70 nations. They were swallowed by those forces of concealment surrounding the Mizbeach. And we must find a way to free them from their shackles of darkness, from their shackles of exile, and allow them to not only to recognize the truth of the Torah and mitzvot, to recognize the truth of Hashem, to recognize the truth in Judaism, but to recognize it in a way and to be awakened in a way that they will be drawn to leave behind that environment that they grew up in, those belief systems that they grew up in, and to return to the Torah, return to Hashem, return to Judaism, and to adopt a new belief system, a new way of living, a new environment. Okay, and so that's something that seems really, really tricky. Rabbi Nachman repeats a few times, how is it possible for these people that are so far away in so much darkness to leave all that behind and to abandon all of that, and now to adopt a whole new way of life, especially when they were taught from a young age that, you know, the Jews are no good, or Judaism is whatever, it's not even something to think twice about, right? how are you going to allow people like that to find the truth of Judaism, the truth of the Torah, the truth of Hashem, in a way that they will take it to heart, and that their Jewish soul within them will find that appealing, and they will be drawn to it, and to a point where they can leave behind everything that they're familiar with and connect to this new way of living, to this new belief system, to the Torah, to Hashem. And so Rabbi Nachman explains that the way to accomplish this is through tzedakah, through charity. Why through charity? So he brings us a pasuk from Shlomo Melech, pasuk in Mishlei, Hon Yosif Re'im Rabim, that money, wealth, increases friends, increases friendship, and increases friends. And so Rabbi Nachman explains that whenever there's money that is exchanged, charity, not just money, whenever there's charity exchange from one person to the other, money that is being given from one person to the other, so the space in between these two people is filled with a friendly energy, a peaceful energy, an energy of love. You buy love with charity, says Rabbi Nachman. Okay, you buy love and friendship. So in one place he says friendship, and then when he explains himself again, he says love. You buy the love of other people when you give them charity. And so when there is this love between these two people, there's this friendship between these two people. So what that means is that a message can travel from one person to the other without any interference. What does that mean? Rabbi Nachman explains that we know from the physical world that sound travels through the air. When a person speaks to someone else, it travels in the air, and the vibrations of those words are being transmitted in the airwaves. And therefore, if there's interference, if there's a lot of noise, or if there's even a lot of wind, okay, and so the air is not peaceful, the air is very stormy, right? There's a stormy wind. Then you can be standing a few meters away from your friend and speaking loudly, and still he won't hear you. Sometimes he won't hear exactly what you're saying, and sometimes he won't even hear that you're saying anything, because the interference is so great. And so in order for a message to be transmitted from one person to the other, a great distance, the farther that you want the message to be transmitted, the farther you want the message to travel, the more you must make sure that there is no interference in between those two people. And the interference is removing interference is through the friendly energy. When there is an argument, there's an energy of machloket, of separation, an energy of argument, an energy of hatred, then there is interference. And then the communication is blocked between those two people. Because communication is all about connection. It's all about a connection. And when there is the energy that is the opposite of connection, the energy of separateness, the energy of arguments, of hatred, then that's the interference. The interfering energy will block any communication from happening, any message from traveling. And so by filling the space with friendly energy, peaceful energy, the energy of love, so now someone that knows how to speak can speak, and his words will be heard in the other end of the world, if that space in between them is filled with the peaceful, friendly energy. So how do we fill up the world with this peaceful energy in the greatest way? How can we fill up the greatest amount of space with this peaceful energy? So Rabbi Nachman explains that that's through giving charity to a Talmid Chacham. When you give charity to someone who's devoted their life to studying Torah, to filling themselves, to developing their divine consciousness, their Torah consciousness, that person represents a soul that is a collective soul. It's a soul that is a source soul. It's a soul that includes many, many, many souls within that soul. And so when you give charity to someone like that, it's as if you gave charity to, let's say, 1 billion people throughout the world. Because that one soul of the Talmid Chacham, the one who is a Torah scholar, he's devoted his life to studying Torah and developing his Torah knowledge, his consciousness of Hashem, his divine consciousness, his Torah consciousness. That person is including 1 billion different souls throughout the world, at least. And so when you give charity to him, it's as if you gave charity to all of those souls that are included in his soul. And so now that friendly energy that comes about, that fills up the space between the people, between the giver and the receiver of charity, of tzedakah, is expanded. That friendly energy is expanded to fill up the space between the one giving the charity and all of these souls throughout the world that are included in the Torah scholar's soul, in the Talmid Chacham's soul. And so now you have this friendly energy, this peaceful energy filling up the whole world and dissolving any of that hatred energy, any of that judgment and argument energy and separateness energy, and which is basically the interference. There's all that interference is just dissolved. And so now the space is prepared and ready for the message to be heard and to be accepted. And so that's what we're up to now, in middle of Od Hey, in middle of part 5 in the Likutei Moharan, in this Torah, Yud Zayin. So Rabbi Nachman says like this. He says, "Ki ahava ve'al yedei zot ha'ahava shekona al yedei hatzedakah, al yedei ze nizdakecha avir." By virtue of this love, which he acquires through giving charity, right? When you give charity, you're acquiring, you're buying love of those people that you give charity to. Al yedei ze nizdakecha avir. In this way, the air is purified. The atmosphere is purified. And the more people give charity if you give charity to more people, then this atmosphere, this peaceful, tranquil air is spread over greater and greater spaces, distances. Because love is all about connection. Love is all about the unifying, the combining of two spirits. The spirit of one person who is loving together with the other person who is being loved. And that's what it means. That's the concept of this peaceful, tranquil atmosphere, this peaceful, tranquil air. That each person, their spirit, right, or their person, their feeling, their energy, is at peace with the other person's spirit. It's at peace with the other person's energy. And Rabbi Nachman says that this is the opposite. Okay, what causes the interference is called ruach ra'ah. So the spirit of love is the peaceful spirit. It's the friendly spirit, the spirit of pure air, pure atmosphere. And then the interference is called the evil spirit. The evil spirit is the interference in the atmosphere. That's the hatred. And the hatred energy is what separates between people. Because hatred is synonymous with the evil spirit. Hatred is the evil spirit. It says in the Pasuk in Shoftim that Hashem put an evil spirit between Avimelech and between those people that lived, the inhabitants of Shechem. Rashi explains over there, what does it mean, an evil spirit? It means hatred. So hatred is the evil spirit. Okay, it's the interference that we're speaking about. And so therefore hatred is this evil spirit. It's the chaos, the confusion in the atmosphere, the interference in the atmosphere, that because of that you can't hear one another. that those words that are spoken cannot be heard. ולהפך, אהבה ורעות הוא בחינת אוויר הנח והזך, שעל ידי זה נשמע הדיבור מרחוק. But on the other hand, love and friendship, they are synonymous with the tranquility and the pure atmosphere, the clean atmosphere, the friendly atmosphere, the peaceful atmosphere, that through which the words are heard, the message is heard and transmitted easily from one end of the world to the other end of the world. And how is that accomplished? How is this peaceful, friendly atmosphere filling the space of the world? That's through tzedakah, as we saw. Shani did tzedakah b'chinat hon yosif re'im rabim. Shani did tzedakah lokeach lo re'im ve'ohavim. Shani did zenaseh b'chinat ha'avir hanach ve'azach. Now, this is accomplished through the charity, because through the charity you acquire friends and loved ones, and through this, the tranquil and pure air and the tranquil and friendly atmosphere comes into being. בכל מה שמרבה ליתן צדקה ליותר אנשים מתרבה ביותר בחינת האוויר הנח והזך, כי כשנותן צדקה לאיש אחד נמצא שקונה לו אוהב אחד, ואזי נדבק רוחו ברוחו ונעשה שטח קטן של האוויר הנח והזך. כשנותן צדקה לשני אנשים נעשה שטח יותר גדול של האוויר הנח והזך. וכן כל מה שמרבה ליתן יותר אנשים וקונה לו רעים ואוהבים יותר, ומבחינת הון יוסיף רעים רבים, נתגדל ונתרבה יותר ויותר השטח של האוויר הנח והזך. Says Rabbi Nachman, the more friends that you manage to acquire through your charity, the more that friendly energy is filling up the space. Okay, because now that you have, let's say, 100 friends, you acquired 100 friends, through your charity, you acquired the love of 100 people through your charity. So now, between you and 100 people, there is love energy. There is friendly energy filling the space. And so the more people you give charity to, the more that friendly, lovely, loving, peaceful energy, tranquility is going to fill the atmosphere in greater distances, more and more of the atmosphere. ועל כן העיקר ליתן צדקה לצדיקים אמיתיים ולעניים הגונים שכלולים מכמה נפשות ישראל, כי בזה הוא מגדיל מאוד השטח של האוויר הנח והזך כנ"ל. כי בצדקה שנותן להם לבד הוא קונה לו רעים רבים מאוד, כי הם כלולים מהרבה נפשות שעל ידי זה מתרבה ביותר מבחינת האוויר הנח והזך כנ"ל. And therefore it says Rabbi Nachman, it's very important to give tzedakah, to give charity to genuine, real tzaddikim and people that are actually needy, actually deserving of their charity. And because when you give it to deserving, holy tzaddikim, righteous people, those souls are included from many, many, many souls. And so it's as if you give tzedakah to many, many people. Right, and so we have to understand that Rabbi Nachman here is saying a little bit more than this. It's not just as if I gave tzedakah to many people, and it's just like a nice thing to say. It's as if you gave tzedakah to a lot of people because all of these other people are also included in this tzaddik. But for this to work, what Rabbi Nachman is saying right now, it has to be a lot more than just an as if. It has to be actually you are acquiring the love of all these other souls that are included in the soul of the tzaddik that you gave the tzedakah to. When you give tzedakah to a Talmid Chacham, to this Torah scholar, it must be that all these other souls that are included in him are actually, on some level, going to experience a love towards you. You have bought their love, and you have bought their friendship by giving the money, the tzedakah, the charity, to that Torah scholar, to that tzaddik, to that righteous man, whose soul includes their soul as well. And because of this, now there is friendship and friendly energy and tranquil atmosphere that is filling up the whole area between you and all these many, many people. כי בצדקה שנותן להם לבד הוא קונה לו רעים רבים מאוד, כי הם כלולים מהרבה נפשות שעל ידי זה מתרבה ביותר מבחינת האוויר הנח והזך כנ"ל. And like that you're exponentially increasing this peaceful, tranquil air, right, atmosphere, and dissolving any of the interference. ואזי כשהאוויר נח וזך, אזי כשמדבר זה שיכול לדבר דיבור הישראלי, היינו דיבור הקדוש, אזי זה הדיבור נכתב ונחקק באוויר, מבחינת לשוני עץ עובר מהיר, ואזי הולך הדיבור ונשמע מרחוק, מבחינת ושמו הולך בכל המדינות, כי מחמת שהאוויר נח וזך, יכולים לשמוע מרחוק. And so then, when the atmosphere is pure, tranquil, filled with this friendly energy, and void of any argument and hatred energy, so then when there is someone who is capable of speaking a Jewish word, a word of Torah that comes from the heart, a pure word of Torah, when he speaks those holy words, then those holy words will be inscribed, written and inscribed in the air, just like words are inscribed, right? They travel. They will be inscribed in the air, in the atmosphere. And where do we see this idea? I see this idea in the pasuk in Tehillim that says, "Lishoni etzofil mahir." My tongue is like the pen of a skillful scribe. So you can speak, and that speech is so effective, it's so powerful, that it's as if it's inscribing itself. It's being inscribed in the atmosphere. Okay, the effect of those words are changing the fabric of reality. It's inscribed in the atmosphere like something that's inscribed in a tablet of stone. Okay, and so there is no interference. So those words really have an effect on reality in exponentially greater ways, in much, much more powerful ways. And then these words that have been inscribed in the air, in the atmosphere, okay, they go and they are able to be heard far away. And this idea is expressed in the pasuk, represented in the pasuk in Megillat Esther, that says that V'shomo holech b'chol hamedinot. His fame went out to all the provinces. Okay, this is the aspect of the words being heard throughout the whole world. A tzaddik can be sitting and giving Torah to only a handful of people in front of him, but because the atmosphere has been purified from that evil spirit, from this spirit of anger and frustration, that spirit of hatred, so those words are now inscribed in the atmosphere, inscribed in the air, as and heard throughout the whole world. They're spread out throughout the whole world. And then it's possible to hear those words in places that are so far away, even in the darkest places, and in places where those souls were lost among the 70 nations, among the idol worshippers in an environment of that's completely the opposite of Torah and mitzvot. Even in those far and dark places, these words, these holy words, are able to be heard and able to be recognized. And then Rabbi Nachman is going to explain to us what happens is they will start to see those words in their own books, meaning in the New Testament, right? In the Christian Bible, they will find words and expressions and sentences that prove to them how Christianity is false, prove to them how the Torah of the Jews and is the Torah of God. It's the only Torah. How Judaism is the only truth, the only true way of serving Hashem, and how the God of the Jews is the only true God. They will see that in their own books. In the Quran, they will see the truth of the Torah being expressed, okay, in their own words, in their own books. And that's because there's no interference. And so those words are radiating, they're reverberating, they're resonating throughout all of reality and the fabric of reality, and being recognized in places that you would least expect to see the truth of the Torah. You would least expect to see the Torah in the Quran or in the Christian Bible or in any other of the religious books, the other religions. You would least expect to find it there. But nonetheless, those people, those Jewish souls found in those places, in those religions, will find the Torah, will find this truth in their own books. And we'll see more about that, B'ezrat Hashem, in the next year.